Everyone wants to come for gambling, for addiction, problem gambling. What about shopping? What about the shopping addict? Shouldn't we be regulating that? That is the question that our guest, Jeff Edelstein, poses today. Let's do it here on LOL.
Does he think? I think he thinks this. He thinks this is a go. Vegas Dave thinks this is a go.
Hot naked girls doing yoga.
What?
Why don't you just win like a man?
Random.org. Type in 1 for yes, 2 for no, and let the DFS gods pick for you.
And I'm absolutely begging you not to dupe us. Please don't dupe us.
All right, welcome to Lulz. I was touching base before we went live, and apparently I've done one other show with Jeff. It was on the Swolecast, so today we'll have a slightly different energy than that one. What were we doing on that Swolecast show?
It was a summer show. I think we got into an argument. This was when you debuted the. Well, it wasn't when you debuted, but it was hot on the heels of Week 17 is all that matters.
Yeah.
And I said, really? And you got real pissed off about it. You're like, straw man arguments, all this stuff. And we got into it. And then we talked about the tree. You know, I was selling you vitamins, if you remember.
There you go.
Kitchen's tree, right? You know, he said he to join to be in David Kitchen's tree. It was a multi-level marketing scheme.
That's right. For the people who aren't familiar with you, I know you write for a few different outlets. Obviously, have done stuff over there with Better Collective and Roto Grinders. What is your kind of official title, job description? Yeah,
they call me a senior analyst now at Casino Reports, which is where a lot of the old Better Collective crew is there. Headed up, Cal Spears and Adam Small are behind it, and I'm with Brett Smiley and Eric Raskin, a bunch of other guys that that kind of did Sports Handle back in the day.
Brian, how are you doing here? Fresh off of our 1 week hiatus last week.
Doing good. I got Jeff DM'd me his article a week or two ago, and I was like, I love talking about this topic. Let's have him on.
There you go. And we got the chat today. Robert Griffin saying, my ex couldn't stop swiping the credit card, so I love this video titled here, which is Regulate Shopping Like We Do Gambling. It is a funny thing just to juxtapose the archetypes of that to a big, male or female, and how there are probably lots of relationships where two people fighting over how to spend the disposable income. I want to go buy a bunch of shoes. You want to go do 8-leg parlays on FanDuel. I do like thinking about that dynamic.
Well, yeah. The thing of it, though, is that, and, Brian, I don't mean to step on you, is that the way they're covered, I saw an article in the New York Times, and it was about shopping addiction. And it was this fun, jaunty, hey, people sometimes get addicted to shopping, and this is how you stop it, by, reining yourself in. And nowhere in the article, and there was part of the article that was congratulating this marketing firm that sends out, tailored offers to people, and how and this is like the exact opposite of what's happening in gambling at, the legislative level. And it just struck me as funny. And I know, Brian, it strikes you as more than funny.
Yeah. It's funny. It's also an interesting topic. And I think you could have a good faith debate on both sides of this issue. I mean, I really do think it comes down to preferences, though. That's pretty much my final opinion. Is they prefer shopping in this analogy, anyways, and they do not prefer gambling, right? So I've yet for someone to put a strong argument against, my claim that gambling's just entertainment. Now, you could say it's entertainment you hate. Porn's entertainment, right? And maybe you think that should be, and that is where I think the good faith discussion could come in. It's maybe it is overall really bad for society. Let's look at the numbers and see if it is that bad. But I don't think that's what's happening, right? I think what's happening is there's just a lot of people who just hate that form of entertainment. They think it's, evil or more destructive than the numbers would put out, and just want it gone completely. And when you point out kind of this dynamic in other areas of the world, maybe there's some maybe some people go, oh, that's a good point. I never thought of it that way, but I think a lot of it is like cognitive dissonance and like, no, gambling's evil, shopping's great.
What Jeff, I pulled this up on screen here, also going to drop it in the chat, and I will link to it in the show notes for people who want to check it out. Obviously, the impetus for this piece was reading that shopping article, but obviously kind of sports betting regulation is something you've been thinking and writing about a lot lately.
Absolutely, yeah. And there's like right now they have like the Safe Bet Act at the federal level, which it's about to be reintroduced. That would I completely torpedo the industry as it stands. It has, there's just a million things in it that it would get rid of, such as like VIP programs and bonus programs and advertising. It would strip it down, prop betting. It would strip it down to its basics. But then, when you really start comparing sports betting and shopping and the way they're marketed to people, there really is no difference. And the New York Times article points out that like some 5% of Americans suffer from, I forget what they call it, but like compulsive shopping, compulsive buying disorder, I think it's called, which sounds like it affects a hell of a lot more people than gambling disorder. Like the highest I've ever seen, percentage-wise for gambling disorder, New Jersey, Rutgers, they do a study every few years where it comes in around like maybe 4% of the population. Shopping, there are more people addicted to shopping than there are to gambling. You'll never, ever in a million years hear anyone say, well, we really need to rein in these, Banana Republic's advertising too much. They're really trying to drag in those Gen X guys with their khakis. You're just not going to hear it. And I realize when you say it out loud, it's kind of silly, but I think you could look at it from the other side and be like, maybe it's a little silly how badly they treat and how dark they see, sports betting, is comparatively speaking.
Yeah. You're never going to see 21 or older before you could, shop at the Gap or something, right. They're not going to install hotlines for people who are addicted to shopping or kleptomaniacs or whatever it's called. That's never going to happen.
What do you think? To me, a lot of the kind of interesting comparisons with this stuff, and what's so funny about reading about this and thinking about the shopping comparison, I just finished reading the book Empire of Pain, all about the Sackler dynasty family, who's essentially responsible for the opioid crisis. And a lot of their cover for this was, hey, the FDA approved our drug, blah, blah, blah. But a lot of the issues stemmed from them basically flat out lying in their advertising, basically downplaying the risks of actually getting hooked on these drugs, using the FDA as a shield. To me, like how it's marketed is really where these things start to become interesting. With sports betting, I guess the counter to some of this would be like a lot of the advertising is, hey, guaranteed winner, stone cold locks, win all of this money. I guess what you would counter that in the fashion industry, they say like, you're going to be a better person. You're going to look better because you can wear. I'm just wondering, is the marketing more, I don't know, pernicious in gambling than it is in these other industries?
I think you could make the argument that it was. I remember when DFS really exploded, like I guess in 2015, and FanDuel and DraftKings outspent every other industry in that year. Some of those ads were a little ridiculous. I think the Daily Show did a spoof on it with Seth Rogen, those commercials definitely gave you the indication that it was pretty easy. I think the gambling companies have learned their lesson a little bit. To me, most of the ads that I see are pitching the entertainment aspect, and the fun aspect, not that you're guaranteed to win. Some of the stuff has been, dicey through the years, like the no risk bet. They're not no risk, there is risk, but I think they're getting better at that. And honestly, if I were the sports betting czar of America, I would tell DraftKings, FanDuel, MGM, and everybody, settle down. Let's just, let's not draw so much attention. I think it's fascinating. I think another good comparison, honestly, to sports betting right now is the liquor industry, right? So the liquor industry did not, post-prohibition, the makers of liquor, got together and said, let's not go crazy with advertising. There was never a ban on liquor advertising, like on television or radio, but the liquor industry itself like self-imposed the ban. They all got together, shook hands, gentleman's agreement, because they felt that it was going to bring way too much attention, and other things were going to happen. Then finally, in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, they started dribbling out of it, and now you see liquor ads on TV. But I think the sports betting companies would be wise to do something similar. Maybe not completely end advertising, but to pull back. Like, one of the big things that I see, and I know it's part of the Safe Bet Act, is to ban advertising during sporting events, right? Which you're like, well, if you own a sports book, well, that's the prime time you really want to advertise. But you could look at it the other way. If I'm watching, a Wednesday night, Knicks Heat game, I'm probably pretty well aware that I could bet on it at this point. I don't know if I need to be bombarded with it, and I certainly, and again, speaking as a parent, I don't need my 11-year-old to be bombarded with it either. So there, I could see the argument that, maybe, I hate the idea of the government saying, no, you can't, but I kind of like the idea of the industry itself, being a little bit better at policing itself.
Yeah. Yeah. I could see that. I mean, I would say, just advertise daily fantasy constantly, and forget the sports. That would be nice.
Well, it's not, honestly, it's not the worst idea for these companies. I mean, DraftKings and FanDuel, nobody saw them coming as the sports betting leaders, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's not one industry insider that says, these are going to be the two people that dominate. And clearly the reason they dominate was because they had, the three of us and, 3 million other, emails of DFS players, and, it was an easy funnel.
Pete, you mentioned, whose marketing is more salacious or whatever. I mean, how many times have we all, got our phone or alert or an ad that was just something you were just talking about? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they're getting very good at this. I mean, 'cause I see sport, of course, in my world. I see sports betting ads all the time, and I like never take them up. But I'm like, I don't even like that sport. Why are you sending?
Yeah.
But the Amazon or whatever alerts is just like, oh my god, these are deadly accurate for me. And I can't. If somebody has a shopping addiction or something like that, I'm sure they definitely. But I think the issue, there's a couple issues here too. So he posted in his article the numbers from one organization on the gambling rates. I think if you polled your average, if you just polled 1,000 random Americans, they'd probably say the gambling addiction rate is like 20% or something. They would say, and I bet if we looked, we could find those studies. I put money on it. Much higher than what it actually is here, this has been my looking into this as well, is about 1-2%. Some of them get up to 3%, but a lot of it is like, what do they define as problem gambling and, mild gambling? And sometimes it's like, does this affect your life in any way? And it still doesn't even get that high. Not that when it happens, it's not horrible, of course. So there's the outsized public image, which has been beaten into people because it was illegal and they wanted it to be illegal, especially casinos, because it did them get more people into their brick and mortar places. But then there's the question, okay, well, what do you do about this 1 to 2%? And that is a huge problem. It's just a problem with like all of governance, because basically 1 to 2% is the number of people who have problems like in all sorts of venues of life, not just
alcohol.
addiction.
I mean, look at alcohol.
Yeah, sure. Or like violence is usually done by like a small percentage of the population and things like that. And like, how do you handle it? And so I kind of this is kind of how it's gotten into our show so much is like, people like us and Jeff or whoever, a lot of the time they're like, we got to stop problem gambling. They kind of go on the bandwagon. That's a bad word because, we all want to stop problem gambling, but they focus on that as opposed to the more realistic, I think, viewpoint that it's an entertainment product that does affect a small percentage of the population. And so what happens, and I worked in politics for some years, is this type of wedge issue gets utilized for the companies, not for you guys, and not for the 1%. And there's some sort of blanket, like Pete was talking about the Sackler family, so like a small percentage of the population has this problem. They'll do a bunch of blanket approaches to try to solve this problem, and eventually it gets co-opted and captured for the benefit of the companies you're trying to regulate. Like, it happens like almost every single time in every industry. It's crazy. And so I feel like as people in the gambling industry, we're playing into that narrative and just making that like a foregone conclusion that's going to happen. And I think that is what's going to happen. There is going to be regulation, and it might not be as intrusive to get the bill passed, but eventually they'll massage it. They're there forever. You're not. And it'll be massaged into some sort of benefit for them and solves none of these problems. Like, the rates will not go down.
The rates are baked in. The rates are baked in.
Yeah.
The incentives can never be properly aligned, right? Like, it will inherit, and the same thing about the Sacklers, right? Where it's like you want them to be more honest about the addictive qualities of their drug, so less doctors prescribe it and they sell less drugs. It was like they are incentivized to lie and get away with as much as they can to make billions. Same with the sports betting companies. Like, you want them to put up way more red flags. All of these things create more hurdles to getting people to get on their site. They are not incentivized whatsoever to want to do that.
No, they are incentivized for moting off their competition, though.
Yes.
So if they can raise that barrier of entry somehow through using this wedge issue or this popular issue, they will do it. So they could say well, there needs to be a $10 million a year fee, to just start your own, best ball company, because we need that money to go to this fund to fight problem gambling. And then, the Jeremys of the world and whoever else starts these companies goes I don't want to front $10 million. I don't have $10 million. Can't get my investors to front that $10 million. We're just not going to get involved in that industry. And then, I mean, if you look at DraftKings, since sports betting happened, how much innovation have we seen? I mean, there used to be the arcade DraftKings style. They were trying new things. Rainmakers. I think Rainmakers might have actually also contributed to them deciding, maybe we shouldn't try new things. But there hasn't really been a lot in the last couple of years. I mean, barely anything.
Yeah, they just filed some paperwork to DraftKings Predict to get into the Kalshi type prediction markets if the CFTC allows that to go through, right? Which would completely, if that, that's, this whole industry right now between sweepstakes and the prediction markets. I mean, anyone who tells you they know where this industry is going to land in 6 months' time, a year's time, is lying to you. We are definitely in a moment in time here where we're going to look back at how quaint it was, a year ago, when all we had to worry about was a couple of sports betting companies.
I think I just saw yesterday someone had shared, was it Maryland shot down the sweepstakes sports betting model?
They're in the process of shooting it down. It's funny here in New Jersey. I'm a New Jersey Jew, which makes me more or less a New Jersey Italian. That's the way it works out here. We're all the same. And Clinton Calabrese, I think I'm pronouncing his last name correctly. He's an assemblyman. A couple months ago, he put forward a bill to regulate the sweepstakes industry here in New Jersey. Okay, let's bring him in under the tent. And then 2 days ago, he introduces a second bill to completely ban them.
Yeah.
Right? I think somebody got to Mr. Calabrese and said, "Hey, can we have a little discussion here about this?" As someone who's been in politics before, I've been covering New Jersey politics on and off for 25 years. I've never seen somebody introduce a bill and then 3 months later introduce the exact opposite of a bill.
Yeah, I've seen some crazy things. believe it or not. But that is hilarious. And I mean, speaking of incentives, as P was saying, I mean, we know what the incentives are there. He was going to get a lot of funding if he puts in the exact opposite bill,
right,
and not be primaried. And I wonder, a lot of times it depends on your position in the your state's assembly, depending on how it's functioned. Like some of these assemblymen, they'll introduce bills, but they have no power. They can't whip any votes, and so it's all just for some constituent that they know. But if it was somebody who was actually had power and they got him to flip like that, that's quite a political maneuver.
Yeah.
And doesn't it, like, what are you guys rooting for, like, say, the sweepstakes model or the poly market type model to really take off in a way where it almost like illuminates the absurdity of the state by state, like sports betting laws, and how you can do some stuff here. And it's like, oh, we all just agree to use this workaround model. And when we're just all back to doing it. And then it's like, well, then why don't we just do it in the regular form when it's clearly having the same effect?
Yeah, I guess like the more mature, older version of me is like, I don't like it. I don't like them trying to like worm their way in through like the keyhole. But then I look back, 10 years ago, and all I wanted was DFS to worm its way in through the. I mean, DraftKings and FanDuel got their start by doing exactly what the sweepstakes companies are doing, exactly what Kalshi's doing. They found a loophole and they burst through it. And again, I mean, we were all there for that time. There was a legitimate like fear that DFS was dead.
Yeah.
And it's not. And I guess the irony today is that there's probably not two companies fighting harder against sweepstakes and prediction markets than FanDuel and DraftKings.
Yeah.
Today, right? And they did the same thing to get DFS through. So
I think the goal is, unfortunately, you find the loophole, you get in, then you close that loophole behind you. is what they do there.
So, but the question of am I rooting for it though? It is interesting. I'm not really rooting for it, especially the prediction markets, because I feel like that is like we're getting into like real Wild West territory there, and like. The one thing that you've been seeing, since sports betting has been legalized, and it's happening right now, a bunch of college basketball teams, a lot of talk about, Jonte Porter and all this stuff. And again, the true fact of the matter is this stuff has been going on forever, right? And it's probably only being brought to light because of legalized gambling. You look back, like who brings, this is the legalized gambling people bringing these, nefarious people to the table, right? They're the ones saying, hey, we got a problem here. We need to, somebody do something. When when it was just offshore, when it was, quasi, when it was just legal in Vegas, God knows how many games were fixed, how many, points were shaved. There was nobody watching, So, I mean, I think, if you're a sports fan and hate gambling, you should probably want a very robust, model that is, where there's watchers watching the watchers, basically.
Yeah, hard to pull the incentives and consequences and get them aligned.
What do you guys think for the I don't know, the entities or whoever is pushing like we need to be way more careful about problem gambling, like this is a huge issue. How do you think they feel about the sweepstakes models and these loophole stuff? Like, do they see a difference, or in their eyes is it all the same?
I think they see a difference in that there was just zero, RG messaging going on there, right? In the sweepstakes model, there's no responsible gambling messaging, and the Kalshi model. I mean, they don't even call them. They don't even consider themselves gambling, right?
Yeah.
That's prediction markets, and So yeah, the people I've talked to in the RG field definitely would want to see either this stuff go away or bring it all in under the same tent, and then figure it out from there, which might happen. I mean, if I was betting, I would bet sweepstakes is in trouble because that's going to be a state by state issue, and I would bet that prediction markets are going to get through because it's a federal issue and there's friendly people. When the president's son is on your board, it seems like you're probably going to be all right.
I always thought Barstool made a big mistake by not becoming we'll take any bet, sports book, right? Because they were banning people just as much, if not more, than anyone. This is a side issue of all this. Is while all this chatter is going on how much and how much do we regulate, what do we regulate, how many companies are allowed in, there's no chatter about these companies. If you win, these companies kick you out, which is a huge issue. Huge issue. You guys all, I'm sure, agree. Like the advertising issue is twice as bad when you consider they target these people, and then if they end up sniffing, and sometimes they don't even win, they just make a few good bets. And then they kick them out. Which seems like a clear issue for your local assembly or the federal Congress to think like, oh, well, that's affecting the constituents. We need to look at that. They don't. There's been not a peep of that.
No, there's not. Yeah, it's funny. So you mentioned Barstool because they're owned by they were partnered with Penn Entertainment, and Penn Entertainment now is partnered with ESPN Bet. They're having the same problem. They're not getting any traction. And they had an earnings call last week, and where the Penn guy basically said, yeah, next year at the 3-year opt out, this ESPN Bet deal is probably going to end. But right, how does ESPN Bet? How could they not be like dominating, right? And part of it, yeah, take all the bets, and you'd be a lot better. I think to the limiting thing, competition there is really the answer, because you have Circa, which is in a few states, Prime Sportsbook. I know they're in New Jersey and Ohio. They run the old school Vegas model where, here's our limits. We take all comers. You can repeat. You can do whatever you want. I'd love to see them in more states. But again, if the prediction markets come through, and the sweepstakes model, some of the sweepstakes models, at least, where it's peer to peer, it's going to hurt the DraftKings and the FanDuels and anyone else who's in the business of limiting customers.
Till they buy one, they probably should, but I don't think those are as big a threat as a lot of people do. I think those turn into what like the head-to-head lobbies were in the poker world back in the day, which is you got Rufus Peabody and Spanky posting all the lines, and what are you going to? You're just betting into the best lines possible. They won't offer smaller markets very frequently, and so like you're just basically paying them a small vig, which is better than paying the vig to DraftKings, I suppose. But like I kind of agree with you just because I know how it all works, and they're not going to solve this issue where hopefully competition wins and they don't get their hands dirty. But I feel like it's just a clear false advertise. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm pretty sure it's clear. It should clearly be illegal to advertise the way they do and then ban any winning players. So like, I feel like that is like, they should have to be now, maybe, don't regulate them or like, but just accept in this false advertising and be like, listen, this is an entertainment product. We are charging a vig and we need to, and we're making a profit off of you. You cannot win here. This is, but hopefully you enjoy the small gamble and you're eventually going to lose your money. They don't say this explicitly, but like with, slots or whatever, like everyone kind of knows that you're going to lose 2.5% or 3.5% or whatever. And you're just there for the thrills. Like that's it. You're a casino and you have to admit it and stop all this stuff. Unless you're going to stop limiting people, Pete.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, find me someone that DraftKings is limited at their casino.
Oh, yeah.
Right. I mean, that's obviously not right. That's not going to happen.
They are ramping up. We were talking about this yesterday, maybe on a show or after the show, that there's DraftKings has been ramping up like, hey, maybe you should check in on how you've been doing. Like they give you these warning emails now. And Dan, one of our buddies, was like, yeah, I never feel good when that pops up, DraftKings. I wish you wouldn't do that. And but everyone's been seeing them. They've been definitely ramping up. The KYC is way higher than it was 3 or 4 years ago. Deposit limits are tough, and you do not want to mess with those. Like back in the day, you'd have a VIP guy, and you'd be like, hey, do this for me, do that for me, and bam, it's done. Now, like if you change your deposit limits or something, man, they want to know your life story.
That's what happened to my cash game week thing. That's why it was from like last year when I adjusted it, and then it hadn't been a full calendar year. And I was just like tweaking it, trying to get it higher. And then like once you change it, like it's locked. Like there's nothing you can do for a long period of time.
Yeah, which tells me they're definitely, either, I mean, it's probably a combination, but like worried or they're preparing for what they see as inevitable. And I mean, I don't think they're scared of it. I don't think DraftKings is scared of regulation. I think they would welcome it a little bit. Them whenever you're the biggest player. Yeah, you welcome it and you play the game. And they got good. That was one thing they paid a lot of money to get regulated state by state, but they got good. They know what they're doing now at the level. And so there's like this old Bill Gates story. I don't know if you guys, Microsoft never had a office at the Capitol, in DC. Even when they were the biggest company in the world, they didn't even have one lobbyist. And Jeff will remember this. I don't know, Pete, if you remember that there was a monopoly bust of Microsoft in the 90s. And, wouldn't you know it, Microsoft now has the biggest lobby building in Washington, D.C., So it's like, hey, why aren't you around here? Kind of, little nudge. Why aren't you playing the game with us, Microsoft? They never wanted to. So now that DraftKings has played the game, they know how it works. They're going to be better at it than Underdog, or whatever.
Yeah, you would almost think that that DraftKings and FanDuel maybe pull in like two of the bigger ones underneath them, like an MGM and a Caesars, that they should just band together and together say, "Hey, we're going to limit advertising. Hey, we're going to limit deposit limits. Like we're going to do it uniformly, right? As a way to kind of squeeze out, the competition."
Yeah, I it's a good idea. I mean, I wonder if they're talking about it. Yeah, maybe somebody should whisper in there and like ramp up the daily fantasy advertising. If they did just a moderate amount of daily fantasy advertising and just got rid of sports betting advertising, I wonder if the temperature would go down. But Jeff, they probably don't want the temperature to go down.
They want
the big boys.
They want it, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you might be right? Because I mean, what other businesses are there? I mean, DraftKings. It's just a matter of time, really, before DraftKings and FanDuel are the Kleenex and Budweiser of
Well, but Budweiser not clean because it's sin industry. So it's not an entertainment industry to them; it's a sin industry, and so they're going to treat it as such, which is going to be heavily regulated, heavily taxed, and a small number of companies will operate. I could be wrong, but I'm almost positive that's what it's going to look like.
Even the tax thing is another issue. I mean, these, New York, like at 51%, Pennsylvania's at 36%, New Jersey's trying to go up to 25%, Ohio's trying to go to 40%. I mean, what other industry is getting hit like that?
Yeah, this is like to your article, where it's like if we look at this objectively. Like you have no right. I mean, even though we're bitching about these companies, you also have no right to tax them 51% because old movies used to shame gambling and a bunch of boomers who think gambling's really bad or something. So but that's where they get the right. They get the in their head like, oh no, this is a sin thing. This is a sin tax. It's just like casinos or just like liquor.
Yeah, or weed. Marijuana legalization has legalization the nation in the last 10, 15 years. You hardly hear a peep about it. No, there's nobody campaigning for higher taxes on weed. There's nobody campaigning for know your customer. How much weed are you allowed to buy? But again, gambling's different.
Jeff, do you enjoy covering this beat from like a distance? Like every time I see a new state story about this, I just feel like exhausted and drained. Like it's the same rigmarole over and over. Do you get jacked up, like excited with each little news morsel here, or is it tiring?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. No, especially from like legislative season, January to like April or June when like most legislatures are in action. That because again, Brian knows that so much of this is performative bullshit. Like the Safe Bet Act has zero chance of passing. There's nobody wants it. Like the players don't want it. The industry doesn't want it. Good luck getting Congress to agree on anything, to pass a bill. So so much of this is performative. And then like these state by state stuff, they go, well, maybe we should raise taxes, maybe we should legalize this, maybe we shouldn't legalize that, and you just you wait and you watch, and it happens, it doesn't happen. Yeah, I'm more interested in like the silly stuff, the day-to-day stuff, which is I like seeing the controversies, that's the fun stuff, and I like coming up with stupid ideas like comparing gambling to shopping, and why the New York Times writes 40 articles a year telling us how gambling is the end of American civilization, but they laugh off, people who like can't stop going to Old Navy and buying jeans. I don't know.
Yeah, it's not stupid. It's witty and creative.
Yeah. The what other stuff? What do you get most excited to write about these days? Because I'll see you'll do the occasional fantasy sports article, DFS. You've done some best ball stuff. Are you getting to bounce around a decent amount?
Yeah, I do, and I'll be able to bounce around a little bit more. I got a little bit of news on the professional level that I'm not allowed to really talk about yet, but I'll be able to bounce around a little bit more in coming months. Okay. But yeah, if it was up to me, I would just be touting today's home run picks and stuff like that. Because I spend an inordinate amount of time putting together my lineups in every sport every day, that the ROI is just not there. So if I'm writing about it, nothing made me happier than when I first got hired to start writing about this stuff, so that I could show my wife, see all this time giving one-handed baths to my kids while I build an NBA lineup at 6:55. It paid off in the end.
What is your opinion, your take on kind of the tout world in general? Like Taylor Mathis, our girl.
Right, so I love Taylor Mathis. I'll tell you, the reason I love her is because like, you go girl, is what you take what God gave you and make a buck, right? I mean, I can't lay a brick, you know what I'm saying? But I got a brain that knows how to turn a phrase. I use it. She's got big boobs, and so she uses it. I don't mind it. But as far as like the tout, like the touting in general, show me your work, and then be as much of a tout as you want. So I want to see a running tally. I want to see your record. If you're gonna charge money for this stuff, show me your record. Show me your work. And if you can't do that, then you're a scammer.
Well,
to me.
But the thing I used to kind of agree with that thought. And then, we talked to Joe Holka, who kind of straddles that world a little bit, and, seeing it from my side too, when I'm doing some stuff. And it's like, a lot of people don't care, right? They are actually there for the entertainment product aspect of it. I do think you're obviously in different territory when you're talking about selling picks, right? And that's kind of the line we've drawn, versus if you're just touting just to build up social media clout or build up an audience or have even affiliate deals. But yeah, it's just like, I don't think many casual bettors actually care that much.
I probably not. I mean, again, like I am all like you. If you can make a buck, on TikTok or Instagram by telling me your thoughts on the Nets game tonight, great. Like, go for it. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's the people who charge for it, right? That's that gets kind of icky. But like somebody like Taylor, like I get a big kick out of people who get real aggravated with Taylor. Like, just let her be. I interviewed her once, back in the day, and she's no dummy. I mean, that's clear enough, right? She's no dummy. She was with Sports Grid, with DraftKings, now doing Novig. She's a college graduate, journalism degree. She was a reporter in the bushes. So like, she put in some time. And I mean, again, but people getting so mad about it, and like, the horrible tweets that people send to her, like, get a life, man. Just let her be.
Well, and most of it, and Brian and I have talked about it too. It's the holier than thou sports betting community where it's like they're essentially just jealous that she has, earned the reach and the clout that they actually would aspire to have themselves, doing things the right way. Even though we love all of our, sports betting touts that do good sports betting education, yada yada. There just isn't the market as big as they would, like. For that doesn't mean you have to be, pissed off that someone else found the bigger market.
But this is like this is any industry. Are there writers more talented than me who can't find a job? There's probably 100,000 of them. You know what I mean? Are there actors who are like so good at their craft but can't land a big break because they don't look like, Gwyneth Paltrow or whatever? Like, I mean, this is life, right? Sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't get lucky. It's and again, if you have a skill, a talent, a look, a way about you, and you can figure out a way to monetize it, I mean, this is America, baby. Go for it.
I think that's all fair, but I can't wrap my head around. So like I can wrap my head around problem gambling, right? I get it. I cannot wrap my head around following Taylor Mathis and go like, I gotta get this bet in. Taylor got the Bears -2.5. She didn't even put the vig on there. Who cares? I gotta get this fucking bet in. Who is this guy?
I think, Brian, the thing, because I think about it a lot as well, because obviously you're right. The majority of her audience isn't specifically tailing her bets, but I still would see her value as an influencer if I were a sports book in the same way any advertising works, where it's just like, man, this person continues to talk about this thing. It's always in the back of my head. Oh, I do turn on a game. I remember Taylor talking about bets. I don't want to specifically tail her bet, but I will hop on because I remember she was talking about a side. Like, I think as just a pure lifestyle influencer, I can certainly see how she could be a very, very valuable asset for a company.
I'm curious to see. I mean, she's pregnant, like, which came out of nowhere. Like, I'm curious to see if she brings the baby into the walking bets. It's, I mean, this there could be a whole new market. Like young moms. You know
what? There's a few things you'll notice from, there's different types of, there are mommy influencers out there who then kind of use their kid and their baby as a prop and as a vehicle for content. It's another new thing to make content about. But in the typical, thought leader, as in THOT, there's basically two rules. You never show your boyfriend or your husband, which she's been pretty good about, and you never show the baby, because you're essentially trying to create the illusion that if you play your cards right, buddy, you can get with me. That's what you're selling.
That's what we're selling, certainly.
Yeah. Why do you think I never bring my wife on screen? Because I want to let all the ladies out there who watch Lulz to know.
Yeah. Have you seen our numbers? I posted them on Twitter. We're the highest female viewership in all of DFS.
I believe
at
it.
whopping 5%. So on the flip side of Taylor, though, we have, I think we'd probably all agree. Tell me if you don't. But like, there's like the guys who are just basically fraudulent, right? Like they're betting one side. Like we've had an example of like one guy's betting the other side, and then his buddy's betting the opposite bets, and then that way they could play off of people and be like, look, I went 10-0. There's people claiming things that aren't true and providing, but the reason I'm trying to get at this is I think it's also kind of like the 1% to 2% problem gamblers. It's like, what do we do? What do we do about this small, tiny percentage? And I think that question is really hard and really loaded, but I just had this kind of thought while you guys were talking. I wonder how many laws there are on the books already that just aren't actually being used. Because, like, does it matter that it's gambling if you're committing fraud? Does it matter if it's gambling if you're committing misleading advertising? It's just maybe they just haven't been sued. Maybe there doesn't need to be laws. I mean, it just needs to be a few new laws. Just use the laws already on the books. I'm not a lawyer. We don't give financial advice on this show. But I don't know. What do you think about that? Do you think there's first of all, do you think there should be anything done to the more egregious people on the other side of Taylor?
I guess in a perfect world, the answer would be yes. But at the same time, like I have a hard time feeling any pity for anyone who's just going to be blindly tailing anything. You know, like if I posted my best DFS lineup every night, I'd be the best tout in America. You know, I'm not going to show you the 8 lineups that lost me money. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I don't know. I have a fool and his money will soon be parted, right? I mean, I think that's, there's morons everywhere, and some people are. You look at like a Vegas Dave. People are still paying this guy thousands of dollars for his picks, like legitimately. I'm not sure who's dumber. I don't think it's Vegas Dave in this scenario. Like I could go out every day and I could start touting whatever I want to tout, and I'd say, pay me money for this, and if you want to pay me money for it, what am I going to? I don't know. I feel like it's America again. I'm going.
It goes back to your shopping analogy, right? I'm sure there's lots of idiots who buy a pair of shoes because they've been told it was going to make them faster, and it's like, buddy, you weigh 275 pounds. Like, no shoe is going to make you any faster. I'm sure there's all kinds of stuff like that where really dumb, impressionable people fall for marketing techniques, thinking that it is going to make their life better. That definitely seems transferable to a bunch of different marketing industries.
Yeah, well, and honestly, gambling is probably less so than that, because you still have to be of age to get a bet down, theoretically, right? With a legalized gaming market, right? Whereas my son, my 15-year-old, I had to say to him at one point this summer, you need to stop buying sneakers. Like, you're working this summer, congratulations, stop buying sneakers. He's got more sneakers than he should have. I'll put it to you that way. But he got sucked into it. All the marketing and the TikToks, and and of course, since he's 15, he outgrew them all. So now I'm wearing like these ridiculous sneakers that
I love that. You're getting his hand-me-down cool sneakers.
I'm getting my hands hand
that are still way too cool for you, even as hand-me-downs for him.
They were way too cool for me yesterday. They're going to be way too cool for me tomorrow. I at one point I was wearing a pair of Adidas sneakers that had laces. I mean, they were like this. The thickness was like lasagna. It was like 2 pieces of lasagna for laces, and I'm walking around, and everyone, people are looking at me. I'm just whatever.
I'm picturing you now as like the Bob Kraft aesthetic, where he's like the old guy wearing the like really nice tennis shoes, which is for some reason part of his shtick. I love that for you.
I think honest to God, I'm old enough at this point, and my son bought enough shoes that I don't think I ever need to buy another pair of sneakers for as long as I live.
I love that. Just wait until, the cyclical nature of fashion and some of these become really popular, really valuable in 10 years. And then he comes back to you being like, can I actually get those shoes back now?
It's funny. I bought a pair of Doc Martens in 1990. Okay. And they've come in and out of style 13 times since I've had them,
Speaking of scams, man, I always pick like as you get older and you see all these fashion changes, it's just like you guys are wearing what we wore in 1992, this Looney Tunes stuff. Like, how can you not see that that's going to go out of style? I always think of like there's like a room of clothing executives, and there's just like one guy turned around like, this year we will go shorter, and like, oh yes, genius. All right, everything's tighter, everything's shorter this year, and then 10 years, let's go looser. Oh yes, you've done it again. Well, and then everyone goes out and buys that shit.
Who was the halftime performer this year? I can't remember now. The rapper, I can't remember.
Kendrick Lamar.
Yeah, right. So the only takeaway that I had watching Kendrick Lamar was that he was wearing like wide cut, like boot cut jeans, and I'm like, yes. Because I've been wearing bootcut jeans for the last 30 years, because it doesn't matter if they're in or out of style. That's what I decided upon in 1992. I'm like, oh, good. I'm going to be back in style again for a year. This is very good news.
Beards too.
The beard. I've had the beard for 30 years, right? People. Oh God. Somebody once said to me, it was my wife's friend. I forget the details, but it literally was, how long have you had the beard? And I said, forever. He's like, I thought you were like one of those posers that just grew a beard. I'm like, no, I've had the beard since, since I decided not to get a nose job, I grew a beard, I
think the look works for you though. You have like the distinguished beard. It gives off like hip journalist vibes. Like you could be at some convention milling around with the writers from The Athletic and whatever. I think you just need like a blue blazer, with your cool shoes and your distinguished beard, and you're ready to go.
Yeah, it's a little bit of central casting these days, but what are you going to do?
That's right.
I've been getting a lot of sirs lately, and I'm not liking it.
Really?
Yeah, like I bought some booze at like the grocery store, and they have to like come up and check, that you're 21, and the lady's like, "Oh, you're good," like you're way old. And
We
it's
were-
like, God damn it.
We had a dinner a few nights ago with the company. There was a conference going on in New York, and so a bunch of people were up. So we all met up for dinner, and I'm sitting next to this kid who works with us, and he's 23 years old. And it dawns on me that not only am I old enough to be his father, but I'm old enough to be his not white trash father. Like it would have been perfectly reasonable that like at age 29 I had a child and this is him.
Yeah.
What-
Right.
Not to take a hard left turn back to some of that stuff with incentives and stuff, but do you ever run into weird spots with like you are getting paid, by gambling companies, by companies who are incentivized for the industry to grow, but sometimes having to write critically about it, or some of these, say, predatory marketing techniques? Does like Editorial ever kind of be like, yeah, I don't actually like the way you worded this or the implication? Do you run into that dynamic at all?
So that's a great question, and I will say that I didn't, and then I did, and now I don't again. All right. So,
Okay.
I don't want to name names. You put the math together there. But,
Yeah.
there was right now where we are, what we're doing at Casino Reports and Lottery Geeks and props.com, we have been given the full green light from, the people who run our show, Cal and Adam, to cover the industry as it deserves to be covered. Now, to that end, part of it, again, in case you haven't heard, I'm pretty libertarian, especially when it comes to gambling here. So I'm seeking out stories that, cut against the grain, like this shopping article. I'm working on a story now about the VIP industry. All you see is negative press when it comes to, VIPs in the sports betting landscape, right? Lawsuits, people losing, the VIP host, pestering people to deposit more money. All right, well, I guess maybe there's some cases of this that had happened, and we'll see how the lawsuits play out. But I'm guessing that most VIPs are perfectly happy. They're not spending $18 billion and of their money. They're just going about their business and they're thrilled. In fact, the few VIPs I've met that have been willing to talk to me on the record so far are mostly, they say, I wish I had more interaction with my host. Give me, I want more. So when DraftKings, when Underdog, when FanDuel, when the industry does something stupid, yes, we are free and clear to write about it. But again, on the flip side, I'm also looking for, I hate to say the word positive, but I'm looking for the opposite angles a lot. The contrarian takes, because you're not going to find the contrarian takes in the New York Times or the Washington Post.
Right. Yeah. That the actual mainstream take is vilifying the industry. And it's actually like getting into, with your hyper focus and like domain expertise, there actually probably isn't as much room for like really interesting dissection of the actual problem shit, because it's already happening on such a national level. Yeah.
Yes. Not to say we don't cover it. Listen, if somebody calls me today and says, listen, I'm a VIP at, XYZ Sportsbook, and, I'm down, $150,000 this year, and I only make $60,000. I'm getting 18 calls a day to deposit money, I'd write that story. You know what I mean? But honestly, and I get, believe me, I get plenty of emails from disgruntled gamblers, right? But not a lot. I'd say, I would have to think that generally speaking, people who play DFS, people who play iCasino, people who bet on sports, it's probably like 5,000 satisfied customers for every unsatisfied one. Right? There's not, I mean, how many people do you run into, right, that be like, oh, this sucks. DraftKings sucks. You want them, maybe you want them to be
They're saying
better.
that for different reasons.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Maybe you want them to be better, but not because they're vulturing like every last dime that you have.
And part of that is, I think, it sounds like you talk to a lot of people, like in our bubble, like within the fantasy bubble. I think there is a level of intelligence about how all of this works. And there's so many advantage players and so many people who prefer the fantasy side of gambling because of that, game of skill aspect, to where I feel like in our neck of the woods, you just don't hear that kind of chatter of like, I'm being preyed upon or whatever quite as much. That's why when
Right.
you do get those stories, what was the story, Brian, we pulled up a bit ago where it was the guy was using his like, baptism gift money or whatever to, it's
Right.
like, that was such a sensationalized story of like, I don't ever encounter that type of individual in my life because he is like punting away hundreds of thousands of dollars in the darkness of his own home, not hanging out in a chat about how to be a better DFS player.
Yeah. And when Jeff said if someone called him with that story, he'd take it. And I'm thinking, why would you take it? Honestly, like, so there's 1 in 5,000. Like, it's not really a story. It sucks that happened because that's what they do is they sensationalize, the baptism guy. And then it makes the image of the problem a lot worse than it is.
Well, that's why I'm working on this VIP story, right? Because the baptism guy, I talked to that guy's lawyer, he's the Jaguars guy lawyer.
Okay.
And he's a lawyer for, there's a third high profile case that's escaping me right now. So I'm talking to the guy, and I'm interviewing him, and he's a nice guy, he's a lawyer, he's doing his job. And I'm like, man, you're like got all the high profile cases. You must be getting bombarded daily by like, aggrieved gamblers. He's like, yeah, I have like 20 on my desk right now. And I'm thinking 20 out of how many people are using this product, right? It's a tiny, tiny percentage, I think, of people that are, that get in trouble. And again, it's probably closer to that 1% that we looked at earlier. And again, the other thing about problem gambling, which nobody talks about, is this is not a one size fits all issue, right? Because your problem gambling might be my, Saturday. Right.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like what constitutes problem gambling? Like
Right.
It's very subjective. I'm in an iCasino state. I will punt off a few bucks playing slots sometimes. Literally.
Oh, wow.
Literally.
Way to bury the lead here.
Yeah,
56
right.
minutes in, Jeff.
20 cents a spin. I'm talking. All right. I'll deposit $5. I'll fuck around, I'll do, for 20 cents here, 20
That's
cents there.
business research for you.
I probably can write off, but right. But at the same time, I know that I could like lose control here, and occasionally, I do. But it's, I don't know. I lost my train of thought. But
the varying levels, and it's a subjective.
Oh, right.
answer.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. Right. So I'm paying 20 cents a slot. Every once in a while, I'll tilt out a little bit. Which is another story I just wrote for Casino Reports, where I tilted out playing Lucky Larry's Lobster Mania Slingo. Great game, highly recommend it. But if I, at 20 cents a spin, I can do that, all day long. But if I put like a $5 bet down on a casino game, my heart starts racing. I start getting the sweats. I'm not kidding. That's at $5.
Yeah.
But on a DFS Sunday, I'll put down, NFL Week 8. I'll have, 1,000 or 2 riding out there. I can take a nap and not even worry about it. So like, even within my own, spending habits and gambling habits, my problem, quote unquote, is going to vary, So, if I can't decide in my own brain and heart, like, am I a problem? Is this a problem? Is that a problem? Maybe this is, maybe this isn't. How can the state or some industry or the National Problem Gambling Commission or whoever, or some senator determine this is a problem gambler or this isn't a problem gambler? There's no way. There's no way.
That's a great point. I mean, and we're so trained to like, oh, there was a scientific study. What's the number? 1 to 2%. Okay, that's the number. It's actually very subjective on like, and also who funded the study? What is their motivation? Because you could. I guarantee there's going to be some problem gambling studies that are going to pop up in the next 6 months to a year that are way higher than 1.9%. And it's going to be because it's funded from who knows who, but, and they're going to use this subjective nature to juice the numbers. That's my prediction. That's going to happen, I think. But, you said something. I lost my train of thought. I wanted to, maybe it'll come to me in a second.
If it's about Lucky Larry's Lobster Mania Slingo, I could tell you all about it.
What are you Was it last year? How long have you been in the best ball streets? Because I know you've been drafting a lot, and you'll write articles about that as well.
So I started playing best ball year 2 of BBM, where I entered one solitary lineup, and I made the finals that year. And it's been a downhill run ever since then. But I'm it's fun. That is the most fun you can have, I think, right now when it comes to just like the daily fun of it. Because I've said it a million times. I'm sure I'm not the first person to say it. When I enter a $5 underdog draft, in June, the 45 minutes of drafting is worth the $5 by itself.
Yeah. Well, that's why if these companies, if you ever wanted to build up the case for like, best ball or, fantasy as like a strictly entertainment product, you look no further than best ball. I mean, the equity you get from the draft, sweating the teams, talking strategy with people, just the slow drip of, does this team make it to the playoffs? Oh, it made it to the playoffs. Does it make it to week 16? It's like the bang for your buck that people get is incredible.
It is incredible, and but the more deeper I get into it, the more, I don't want to say luck, because that's not the right word. But once you get through to week 15, I mean, there's nothing you can do. You could build the greatest looking team, the best correlated team.
Jeff's in his best ball nihilist phase.
I am in my best ball nihilist phase. I think
you losing, I don't know, week 16.
Still got to get there, bro.
What happened to you in week 16?
Well, I am a you got to get there, bro. I think that's where I'm landing.
You are.
I think that's exactly where I'm landing. You got to get there, bro, and then whatever happens.
I remember what I forgot. It was you can't prove this either. But Jeff and I have talked about this briefly on Twitter. What percent of addictions what percent of addicts would be addicted to something else if you could, magically wave a wand and there was no gambling, didn't exist somehow, and
that they'd find another vice.
Yeah, I don't know what that number is, and I don't know if you can even prove it, but I bet it's decent percentage of those people, and they'd just be addicted to something else. I know, like my I don't want to dox them, but somebody I know, barely, he was telling me, because he found out what my job was, and he was telling me, oh, I'm a gambling addict. He goes, yeah, but I'm also an alcoholic and blah blah blah. It's like okay, well, this is probably going to happen either way for homeboy, So I think these numbers. And I did want to mention this briefly. We got, when Pete was talking about your possible conflict of interest. I guarantee people say the same thing about us. Like, our industry is gambling. Like, that's both of our jobs. And so they could say, you have these opinions because you're biased, and that's a fair thing to say. I also, I mean, I'm on the totally open-minded that gambling is a destructive force in society and should be banned. Like, I think that is you got to show the evidence and convince me, but I think that is a valid opinion that somebody needs to defeat, with these numbers and articles like Jeff's tweeting. So, but they could levy that accusation against us.
Yeah. Well, Jeff, if they ever do, I assume you will be writing that article, and we will be able to get the breakdown. Let the people know where they can keep checking out your work. Obviously, Twitter, I think, is a good spot. I'm a big RSS guy. Can I set up an RSS to receive all of your articles, Jeff? Now outing myself as a boomer in the term
I'm going to out myself as whatever is post boomer, because I don't think so, or maybe.
Wow, okay. You're you're the guy in the cool shoes. You don't know what a fucking RSS feed is.
Yeah, you can find me Twitter at Jeff Edelstein, and then Casino Reports, props.com. I write a weekly DFS centric column for them, and Lottery Geeks also, in case you want. I write twice a week. I write about Powerball and Mega Millions, and I try to make it as insane and Hunter S. Thompson-esque as possible. So it gives me something to do.
I always enjoy being in your Rolodex of people to get like a little pull quote for one of your articles. It makes me feel like back in high school when the editor of the newspaper wanted to write an article about the poker boom taking place at my high school, and she interviewed me about it. I always get that same fuzzy feeling when I get interviewed.
Sounds good, man. And there'll be coming more of them, I'm sure.
Brian, I just saw, I was over in the in-game syndicate Discord and I still haven't had a chance to update it myself, but it seemed like some pretty big draft caddy updates.
Yeah, the combo info should be overlaid now. The projected combo. MLB, she added MLBs on there. We did a endgame roundtable yesterday. It's half on YouTube, half on our website too. Neil showed up. Neil Orfield, and we're going to be, and you see Davis in the chat. We're going to be doing a PGA show, Davis, me, and Dan and Nerdy, because we're going to have a PGA product hopefully in the next couple weeks.
Ooh, is this like in conjunction with like Via Run the Sims or
Via Run the
something
Sims?
else?
Yeah,
nice.
With Dan cooked up some code.
Neil, I don't know Neil. Neil seems like a really nice guy, but I'm like irrationally angry at him for claiming the oldest man in DFS business.
Yeah, you want to go for his crown? You want to keep him on 150?
Live on stream too. See if you beat the Guinness World Book record holder.
It's a lane that I could definitely drive that down at 55 miles an hour. We'll see.
No, that's an unbeatable record. Never to be broken. DiMaggio and Overfield.
I think it makes sense. I think you take Neil's crown. I mean, then what does Neil have after you take that from him? And on top of it, you already have your talking points. You tell everyone to start their draft with 4 straight running backs. You got to advance. You still got to get there. That could be your lane, Jeff.
It might be. We'll see. Day's young. The day is young.
All right. Appreciate you guys. If you're new around here, this is Lulz. Brian and I host it every Thursday afternoon at 1:30 p.m. Eastern. We also get the audio up on the podcast feed. You can search Lulz Podcast in your app of choice and find us there. Otherwise, have a great rest of your week. I'm headed off to do ship chasing here in about 20 minutes with Davis. Actually, we're going to go through all the free agency and we're going to draft the most impactful moves. And it's been pretty quiet free agency as far as really interesting stuff. So that draft is going to get barren quickly, I imagine. For Jeff, for Brian, I'm Pete. We'll see you guys next time on Lulz.